Hi guys, it's Keith from IELTS Speaking Success, and today we're going to be looking at the IELTS Speaking Part 2 question of describe a historical building. Let's get into it. Hi, it's Keith, and if you don't know me, I run the website IELTS Speaking Success, and I'm really trying to help you speak better English, give better answers, and get a higher score on the IELTS speaking test. Please do subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on the notifications so you can find out about my upcoming videos, and also to let you know I do live lessons on both Facebook and YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 o'clock Spain time. Come and join the fun. And if you've not joined the Facebook group, hey, come and join it. It's Keith's IELTS Mastermind community. Lots of great stuff going on there. Come and join us. Now, history. Talking about historical buildings, events, people, places is really challenging for some students. And if you haven't seen the video about historical events, go and check it out up here. Today, though, we're looking at historical buildings. So let's begin. First and foremost, what's the difference between historic and historical? Historic just means important or famous in history. Historical means in the past or related to history. For example, a few months ago, when Manchester United beat Liverpool, it was a historic football match.
This is going to be Mata, who plays it low. Oh my word, what a hit! What a phenomenal strike from Blind!
Right, really important. Lots of people know about it. It's not historical because it's not really in the past in history, right? But it was important, historic. Historical would be something that happened in the past in our history. So a historical event was when Henry VIII was named King of England. That's related to history and it's in the past. That's historical. So typically we talk about historical buildings related to the past, historical events, things that happened in our history. Great. Let's look at this cue card, the part 2 question. Describe a historical building. You should say what the building is, where it is located, what it looks like, and explain the significance of this building. So let's look at some ideas first. Historical buildings could be, right, a library. Very often these are very old buildings. Theatres are often historical, right? They've been there for maybe hundreds of years or, yes, possibly back to Shakespeare's time in England. Museums are often historical buildings, as are government offices, churches, temples. Some schools are also very historical. Okay, vocabulary. Some buildings which are historical are taken care of and protected, right, by the government. We call these, in England, we call these listed buildings. You can also have a heritage building or a heritage site. Maybe if it's protected by UNESCO, for example, it can be a World Heritage Site. These buildings, which are protected, the government can't lay a finger on them. That means they can't touch them. Neither the government nor local real estate developers, right? They can't touch these buildings. So many of these buildings that are historical have been preserved or conserved by the government. They may have been renovated or restored, which means they've had work done on them to make them better and to preserve the quality. So conserve, preserve means to look after. To renovate and restore means to make them, bring back their former glory, make them look magnificent again in an old way. We often say to keep the original character of a building. So you might restore a historical building to keep its original character, or to bring back the original character. What about the dates? Well, you can say this building was built in the 19th century. This building dates back to the 19th century. It dates back to the time of King Charles I. It was built in the time of King Charles I. Okay. Just a note, right? You don't want to say this building was built in 1872, right? This is not a test of history. And in fact, if you memorize historical facts, it's not helping you because it looks like you've memorized. And you don't want that. You want to speak naturally. So actually, not being accurate is better, right? To say something like, I think it was built around the 19th century. I think it was built more or less in the time of Henry VIII, right? Little phrases like, I think it dates back to, is better, right? If my memory serves me right, it was built in the 19th century. If I remember correctly, it was built in the 19th century. If I'm not mistaken, it dates back to the time of Charles I. It's a nice way to sound natural. You can talk about the architecture. It has some stunning architecture or eye-catching architecture. That's a lot of eye-catching architecture. Try that. Eye-catching architecture. Glorious architecture. Stunning architecture. Great. It has a mix of styles. It mixes both Gothic and Renaissance. Or the building has adopted a variety of styles over the years. This often happens, right? Buildings are restored and renovated, added to over different centuries, and so they adopt a mix of different styles. Excellent. As I said before, don't be a history buff, right? Don't show off all your knowledge of history. So again, a little trick. You can say things like, I'm not an expert, but I think it's Gothic style, right? I'm by no means an expert. By no means. Not at all. I'm by no means an expert, but I think it dates back to the 18th century. That's natural. That's much better. Other similar expressions are, I'm not an expert, far from it, but I think it dates back to the 19th century, right? I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I would say it dates back to the 12th century, right? By any stretch of the imagination. Great expression. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I think, it has a Gothic style mixed with a more contemporary style of architecture. Nice. Different styles you may want to say. In Europe, we have Gothic styles, Renaissance style, European style, classical styles. We can also talk about influence, right? It has a European influence. This building has an Asian influence or a Moorish influence. That's the Arabic influence. A lot of historical buildings in Spain have a Moorish influence, which means the style of architecture is influenced from that culture and that country. Now, when it comes to the building, different parts of the building, again, you don't want to be an expert, right? I'm by no means an expert, but it does have some interesting decorative details. interesting decorative details. Those are the different details or parts of the building. You could talk about the turrets, those are the towers, the gargoyles, lovely, the towers, bay windows, quite common, the columns, the domes, and very commonly you have arched entrances. All of these are interesting decorative details. Another main part of the building is the facade, right, which is the front part, the outside part, and the roof, which often has a dome on the roof, especially in certain styles of historical buildings. Great. The historical building I'd like to talk about is a library in the town where I live. It's a gorgeous old building with really eye-catching architecture. I'm by no means an expert, but I'd hazard a guess it was built around the 19th century, and it seems to be a mix of old Gothic style with some more contemporary one. As for its location, well, it's found slap bang in the city centre, not far from the main shopping area, actually. As a matter of fact, it's just a stone's throw away from one of the brand new shopping malls, which is kind of strange because there is a noticeable contrast between the new and old styles of architecture. Talking about the design of the building, well, the library is mainly made of red and dark brown brick. The facade has been preserved impeccably. The government has obviously spent some money on the conservation of this building. It has some interesting decorative details. So, first of all, what stands out most is the central dome, right, which is an integral part of the roof. It also has some spectacular gargoyles just below the eaves of the roof. There are a number of turrets dotted around the building, and finally it has this splendid arched entrance, which makes you feel really welcome when you go into the library. So I think it's a very attractive building. And I think it's important not just for the locals as a library, but also for the tourists. It has become a bit of a major tourist attraction in the city, actually. So let's have a look now at some of the language I was using there and the structure I used to give fluency and nice coherence to my answer. So I talked about this historical building in the town where I live. It's a gorgeous old building. Gorgeous just means beautiful. We often use it for a woman, but for a building, it works very well. Eye-catching architecture, right? Eye-catching means it's very attractive. It catches your eye, right? It's eye-catching architecture. Then I'm by no means an expert, right? Remember? But I'd hazard a guess. I'd hazard a guess is just the same as I'd guess. So you can say I'd guess, I would guess. Or if you want to show off, I'd hazard a guess. Hazard a guess. Can you say that? Hazard a guess. I'd hazard a guess. D. I'd hazard a guess it was built around the 19th century, right? So I'm not showing off my history, I'm showing off my language. Talked about the styles, Gothic and contemporary. Contemporary just means modern, okay? Then I had, as for its location, notice that it's a signpost, right? I'm telling the examiner what I'm going to say, making it crystal clear. Really important to use these connectors, right? As for its location, it was slap bang in the middle, right in the middle of the city. A nice expression is a stone's throw away from. It's a stone's throw away from. Means it's very close. If I can throw a stone there, it's not that far, right? It's a stone's throw away from the main shopping mall. Talked about a noticeable contrast between the styles. Lovely collocation. There's a noticeable contrast between the style, the Gothic style and contemporary style. And then notice another signpost talking about the design of the building. It can't get any clearer than that. Use these connectors. Talking about the design of the building, right? The facade has been preserved impeccably, which means perfectly or beautifully, right? It's been preserved impeccably. Really nice. I go on, another signpost. It has some interesting decorative details. I love that. Interesting decorative details. Try that out. It's nice. And then I go to talk on about what stands out most. Stand out is what catches your eye, what is the most noticeable. So what stands out? And you link, right? Stands out. What stands out most is, try that. What stands out most is, nice, good. What was it? The central dome, yes. I talked about gargoyles just below the eaves. The eaves of the roof is where the roof comes down, and just under the edge of the roof, normally where the birds go and nest, that's the eaves. I talked about the turrets, which are these little towers which are dotted. It's like if you took paint and threw dots on the building. It's literally dotted in different spots, dotted around the building. Lovely expression. And so I think it's a very attractive building. And so I think it's coming to a conclusion, right? And so I think it's a very attractive building. And then I wind up, it's a bit of a major tourist attraction, a bit of a major tourist attraction. That's an interesting contrast, right? It's not a major, but it's a little bit of a major tourist attraction. And that's it. Great. So we've had ideas, model answer, lots of vocabulary. So now you can go and talk about your own historical building, wherever that may be. Okay? Great. So guys, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Go and watch the next video all about historical events. If you've enjoyed this, please do remember to subscribe, give me a like, and I will see you next time. Take care now. Bye-bye.